Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejohn Sarowick. Sejohn?
We'll be recording everything from here on out. All the things will be recorded.
Which leads us to our it's a special thing, but it's not a very special episode. You probably already saw it, because I posted it yesterday. We did a mini review of Tag, because a week ago,
we should mention that.
I had a lot of thoughts about the movie Tag, but luckily Sejohn, because he's a good friend, steered me away from talking about them.
Yeah, so we decided to take a bunch of unfunny and put it in its own video and put it out there for it to be unfunny on its own and not ruin the rest of it.
So it's 13 minutes of unfunny. That, just like as a primer, the Natick Mothers Group actually had a trigger warning go out on their site because of the thing that bothered me so much.
Really?
And I think that's kind of cool, because I was talking to a friend about it. I'm like, yeah, there was this thing that happened in this movie that I didn't like. And she said, yeah, they actually sent out a thing on this mothers group I'm a member of in Natick, Massachusetts, because it comes from nowhere. And it's unfunny, and it does nothing for the plot of the film.
Wow. I mean, like, that's awesome to hear that that kind of reaction is out there, because I was worried it was going to be one of those things to go unmentioned, because besides you and I talking about, at this point, we should just, we're talking around it so much. There's a miscarriage joke in the movie, and without getting too deep into it, it brings the rest of the movie down from there on out. And so, like, it's just really interesting that I haven't heard that from anywhere else. Like, this is the first I was hearing about it, so I'm glad to hear that there are other groups talking about it.
I'm sure if the Parents Television Council still existed, and they very well might, I just don't read their website every week anymore. Because let me tell you,
you're missing out,
dude. They are funny.
Their newsletter's better than their website.
I believe that their website. They used to do worst of the week, and it was the show that was like the worst show of the week for family viewing. And I submitted. I feel like I've said this before, but it might have just been too.
For the record, I think these people are full of crap. By the way,
dude. Well, okay, but I used to read that religiously. Like, it would come out Monday. I'd come back.
I just
from
didn't
lunch.
want our ironic humor about keeping up with these people to somehow imply that, like, we were endorsing what.
I don't. Well, no, that's the thing. I don't endorse what they do at all. And the story. If you let the story come out,
no, I want to get that quick.
No. Oh yeah, we know the Say Report and its affiliates in no way endorse the Parents Television Council. That being said, I used to come back from lunch every Monday, and my afternoon reading would begin with their worst show of the week, which very often was Family Guy or American Dad. But regardless of what it was a show that I definitely had watched. So I would read through and see why they determined it to be the worst show of the week. And very often, they would cite something that did not happen in the episode.
Oh, God.
So I began correspondence with the Parental Television Council, and I would back up and save the article that I read, and then I would send out, like, hey, you insinuated that there was an incest joke in this episode, and no, that doesn't happen. That would make this the worst show of the week, because incest is pretty despicable and deplorable, but it didn't happen. So I don't know what you're doing here, and I would I'd go deep. Like, I would
making up excuses to be angry, Devon. That's what those kinds of people do. It's one of the worst things about groups like that.
I know, and that's why. Well, the thing that made me stop, and I wrote them a very sternly written letter. I wrote them a very stern letter, because they said that the Miss Universe pageant was the worst show of the week. And then the next week's worst show of the week was something else that aired in that same week. So I'm like, you can't have it both ways. How could you say that this was the worst thing of the week?
I like this little form of rebellion of yours, of just being a thorn on their side with just, like, letters to the editor, essentially.
Like, you understand that, like, I think, and I was like, super supportive of what they do. I'm like, what you're doing is great. There are people out there who do not understand what they should or should not show their children, and you're one of, well, maybe the only resource that they have to steer them in any sort of direction.
Right.
So how dare you
Are they also the
Question
ones that would have giant spoilers on their
on
website for movie
for
reviews?
movie
Like,
reviews and stuff. Yes.
yeah. Because in
Um.
the climax of this film, when this character gets shot in the head, and it's just like, well, there goes The Departed for me.
Oh,
Like
that's thank you. Leo dies.
everybody dies, to be fair, but
That was actually the tagline, though, so you can't blame the PTC for that one. It's
The
just not
Departed,
one of those
everybody
situations.
dies.
The Departed. Everybody dies.
Hope you didn't like Martin Sheen. I did though.
He was my favorite president. All right, so that's it. So yeah, so that tag mini review is out. Sejohn pulled a real PTC there and spoiled what bothered me about the film, but it
well,
is a pretty good. It's a nice little discussion about it.
right.
And
We talk about it in a much better context than we did here.
yeah, no bricks in the conversation. Which brings us to this week's episode, where we made a promise to discuss two films. Sejohn, did you see the film you were supposed to see?
Oh God, no! And we'll talk about why in a second. It was not a great experience.
You didn't
so
see Ocean's 8 either?
Hmm? Well, okay, so let's talk about it now.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it because I didn't expect you to have the exact same problem as me.
I had issues with my local theater, man. Essentially, a couple of days ago, one of the only times I had time to actually get out this week to a movie, and I the reason that I say that is because it really, I cannot begin to tell you how upset this entire event made me. But I planned on seeing either Ocean's 8 or Incredibles in XD, depending on what the group of friends I was going with wanted to go and see. And essentially, we all settled on wanting to see Incredibles in XD, and I was going to figure out the Ocean's 8 problem later. But the thing is like, XD, we talked about this last week, was such a great, like, it was a great conversation, and it got me itching for it. And so the potential to go and see a movie that I now knew that, like, I really enjoyed, so it didn't have to be this, like, hit or miss with the film, means that the ticket was going to be totally worth the price, essentially, right? Like, I was essentially losing nothing by going to this. So I got myself psyched up to go out to this movie. We show up at the theater. I tell the woman behind the counter I would like to go see this 12:30 showing of Incredibles 2 in XD, and she just goes, "No, I'm sorry." And I said, "I'm sorry, excuse me, what?" And she goes, "There is no XD showing of that movie." And I was like, "But there is, or at least it's listed as something going on." And she just goes, "No, the only available time for that showing is in 2D in this theater." And everybody standing in the line in that moment was just so caught by this woman's just like bluntness that I was just like, we didn't know what to do. And so I finally was like, well, maybe we should just go to Oceans then. And the group just had this weird back and forth awkward moment. And you ever feel that moment when it's just you pushing against everything and you're just like, well, I don't want to be this guy right now. So I was just like, fine, let's just go to this. It turns out that it was in, like, they put it in this little tiny ass theater all the way in the back. And I was just like, I can't do this. This is the
Ocean's
complete
8?
opposite.
You actually won?
No.
Incredibles 2.
Incredibles 2. They took it out of the giant ass XD with like the 5.1 Dolby surround or whatever the hell 14.1 nonsense
Atmos
they've got.
7.3.
They put it in the tiniest theater in the entire theater. And on top of that, it was the sound system in this one particular theater is just like one speaker under the front screen, right? Like, this is like the cheapest version of this film we could possibly see.
It sounds like where I almost saw The Disaster Artist, where Disaster Artist Protocol was started, where if the sound quality is not good, I'm not seeing a movie.
Yeah, no. One time I have sat through a film that had weird sound quality, and that was oddly enough the Les Mis musical that came out a couple years back with Russell Crowe and all them. And we didn't the sound in that movie, like, naturally is kind of weird.
I was gonna say, like,
We
sure
didn't
it was
know.
the theater?
Exactly. We didn't realize there was a problem. It wasn't until everybody was leaving the theater that night, and there was a manager outside of the auditorium handing out free tickets, being like, I'm sorry," and every person leaving the theater was like, "Oh yeah, no, this is free ticket, thank you." What was wrong? Like, it was immediately this moment of like, what weren't we supposed to be hearing or something?
I guess we have to go see it again.
Yeah. Oh God, that would be the worst if it was a free ticket just for that one, though. just because I don't ever want to see Les Mis again. But yeah, so I decided like this is not the way that I'm going to see this movie. I had geared myself up to come back to a movie that I've already seen, to at least see it in a new and exciting way, and this is worse than the first time I saw it. So I decided to go talk to somebody and actually get switched over to Ocean's 8. I find a supervisor and I explain to them the situation, and they begin to explain to me that, oh, sorry, we actually moved Ocean's 8 out of the Cineplex to make room for this because we had an issue in the XD theater, and so we did all this moving around. And it was just like, ah. So you mean like neither of the movie experiences that I wanted to have today I can have here? And the thing is, still no make good, still no, not even an apology really. At least this supervisor explained to me what was going on by telling me like there was issues with like a bulb in the XD theater, but like it was just the worst. It's like the universe does not want us to see these movies because
you know
you
why
also
the make good never came, because the make good from him was going to be, but ironically we have a print of Les Mis. If you'd like to see that.
It's the only thing that works in the XD theater for some reason.
Sound is a little wonky. But yes, I cut you off because it does feel at this time that I am not destined to see Incredibles 2. Which, and here's the thing, Sejohn. So here's how it went. The first time, teenagers, I'm a grumpy old man, rah. So then Wednesday, I was out because I had an eye exam. So I'm like, oh, eye exam, that's perfect. And I looked around, and schools are going till June 22nd, like
right.
because of all the snow days we had here. So it's not like I'm going to be mobbed by kids because it's summer vacation on a Wednesday.
Right.
So we're looking and we're like, oh, perfect. There's a 1:30 show. We'll go have lunch and we'll go see this 1:30 show. We'll be fine. We go, and it is the only seats available are bad. Like, there are no good seats available. Still getting there at the time that I usually get to the theater, half an hour beforehand. So it's like, yeah, no, this isn't going to work today.
Why? Oh, because it's reserved seating.
It was reserved seating where we had gone because we wanted to, like, I'm not fucking playing this game anymore. With Incredibles 2. Like, after the first experience, I go to buy the tickets and they're showing all the seats, and I'm like, oh, those are the only ones available? And they're like, yeah, it's very popular. And I'm like, yeah, refund, please. Like, we haven't charged you yet. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I want my time back.
If you could refund the last 10 minutes, that'd be fantastic. Thanks.
So it didn't work on Wednesday either. But Wednesday, as we're leaving the theater, we're sitting and we're talking, and it's like, here's what we're going to do, because it worked out for us before. The Deckers have a lot of rules. Like, I hinted at disaster artist protocol, but we have a bunch of protocols about films. But, like, the number one commandment is no Saturday night movies. Like, you don't do it. You don't go see a movie on Saturday night, because it's fucking amateur hour. People who have never been to the movie theater before in like 45 years of living, like, oh, I like Star Wars. Oh, Melissa McCarthy, she's good.
Yeah, and I ask you to find an employee that's at their best on a Saturday night in the middle of a movie rush. Like,
yeah,
that's
exactly. It's just as bad for them. So it's just Saturday does not happen, and that's a rule. That's a rule that we have. But we broke this rule on the Saturday before Memorial Day because I had been on vacation. We talked about that, and we're like, but we're gonna go see Solo, and we went to a theater that like we know is you probably not going to sell out on Solo. Like we set it up, and we're like, oh, perfect.
If only we had known no theater would.
Yes, right. Like even the guy when we bought our tickets, he's like, yeah, I don't. You might be the only people in there for this 6:00 showing of Solo.
On a Saturday night.
And I'm like, is it because of weather? And he's like, yeah, let's say it's because of weather. And I'm like, oh, God. I'm excited to see this movie now. I like Solo. I'm the guy who liked Solo.
I'm with you. We'll have to have that discussion soon, too.
Yeah.
But
we got time because you didn't see Ocean's 8 and I didn't see Incredibles 2 because I get to the same theater where I went to go see Solo, and there were people there, but it was for a Saturday night 6:00 showing, relatively dead. right?
Right.
And that was the
Right.
weekend before we all knew that people hated Solo forever. Like,
Mhm.
this is not the movie that people will enjoy. This was when like there was still hope in our hearts. So it was surprising. And now this is a week after Incredibles 2 came out, right? So I'm
Right.
like, a 6 o'clock show. I know this theater notoriously does not have people for the 6 o'clock shows. Their early stuff sells out and their late stuff sells out, but like 6 o'clock is a ghost town there. And it's because there's a lot of eateries around. So people
Mm.
go eat and
Yeah.
then they
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
see a movie, or they see a movie and then they go eat. So, like, the dining hour is the time to go to this theater. It's Mystic
Nice.
Luxury Cinema. I'll give them a shout out. So, I go at 5 o'clock. I am there an hour beforehand. And the way that their seats are set up, too, I'm like, even if we'll sit in the back row, because that's the best row to sit in. So, there's no teenagers behind us. And their seats, they got those really nice seats. So, even if there are people in front of us, we're not going to be able to see it if they're on their phones.
Right.
Like
Right.
because there's so much seat there blocking. So we're all about it. I go there at 5 o'clock, and there's a bunch of people, but I figure that these people are like leaving the film or going to see the Jurassic World that starts at 5:15. Like
Right.
that's what I figure this line is for. I do not think it is for a 6 o'clock movie that begins in an hour's time. And I get to the desk and I
But
go, "Can I get one for Incredibles 2?" And he's like, "It's sold out." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah." I go, "Cool." He's like, "Next one's at 8:45," and I'm like, "Yeah, no, thank you. I'm
oh
not sitting
man.
here for 3.5 hours."
Oh man.
So it just seems like it's not supposed to happen for me. Like at this point, it feels like the gods are conspiring against me, or they might be conspiring in favor of me, because unpopular opinion, until you dragged me to Ratatouille, I was kind of done with Pixar. I don't
Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about this before, but like I
and
I I have yet to give up on them, I guess. I is where we landed last time.
it's
I don't
not
know.
even
I
that,
mean,
like, it's not that I had given up on them. It was just like, yeah, it was all right, but like Finding Nemo definitely didn't do it for me. And I don't know, maybe you can settle this one for me, because I feel like the world loves The Incredibles.
mhm.
I feel like The Incredibles 2, in the realm of like, I want a sequel to this fucking movie, is the number one. And I said that to Dale yesterday, and she's like, "What are you talking about?" I no nobody I know feels that way.
Is what do you wait, what do you mean? Explain to me what you're saying.
Dale thinks that I have manifested some belief in my mind that the world has been clamoring for a sequel to The Incredibles.
No,
No,
they
right?
have
Like
been.
that's okay.
It's
Thank
like
you.
one of
That's
the.
what I want.
It's like one of the things that Brad Bird practically was like, "I made it. Stop asking me." Like that was essentially his attitude with this movie.
Thank you. No,
No,
and that's
they've
what I'm
been.
saying. I'm saying thank you for that, because since they ended the first movie on a cliffhanger that, I mean, I knew it was just an homage to Fantastic Four #2.
Right.
Like
Right.
that was never intended to be a like cliffhanger for the next movie.
Oh
But
yeah. No.
everybody was
He.
convinced, like, "Oh, there's gonna be a second one," and I'm like, "Is there? Is there gonna
Well,
be a
it's
second
I
one?"
don't know. Yeah, I don't know about that part. I mean, because yeah, I'm sure that some people when they see a cliffhanger, that's exactly what they think. But like anybody that looked at what Pixar was doing at the time, this was before they started going down and the sequel route, right? Like they were very adamant that they were trying to avoid sequels at all costs. Toy Story being really the only exception because it had been so long. But other than that, like they were very adamant at that moment that like everything was going to be a new property. They still had plans for like Wall-E and all that, right? Like that was Incredibles came out at a time when Pixar didn't need to be making an Incredibles 2, right? And I think that we've looped around to a point where they do kind of need to be doing that kind of stuff at the moment just to keep themselves afloat while they figure out what their next step is, you know?
Yeah,
But I do think that like Incredibles also came out just before the big superhero real like hit, right? Like maybe right in the middle of it if you count like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is really kind of being the kickoff.
yeah. I
Because
mean,
they were
2004 it came out, so
right.
it came
So
out the same year as Spider-Man 2, which
and
cemented that sequels are going to be a part of this whole thing.
Well, right, yeah, and not just that sequels, but that like superhero as a genre might actually be a viable marketing thing, right? Like that
Yes.
was suddenly the moment when studios were like, oh, maybe this is maybe making a superhero movie isn't the death knell for an IP, right? Like,
That's
they
when Fox was like, we should do a Fantastic Four movie. Fucking Disney just did it.
right, um, man, so like. People have always kind of really wanted a sequel, but I don't think anybody ever really expected them to until you get really deep into the MCU stuff. So it feels like maybe in the last like 3 or 4 years, there's really been this big like, hey, maybe now's the time for Incredibles to come back. Now that superheroes are a different like, it's a different context for them now. Also, I mean, a lot of other things in the world have changed that Pixar is always really good at handling. Things about adulthood and parenthood and things about like race and gender and all this great stuff. So like them coming in and making this movie and it being what it is, it could only happen now. So like I'm glad that it wasn't something that they rushed out 10 years ago. But I also do feel like people have definitely been waiting like on pins and needles to find out if this was ever going to happen. Especially because by the time you see Cars 3 coming out, you're just like, come on now. Like of all of the things to keep going back to the well on. So maybe more in the context of people wanting Pixar sequels more than anything else. Maybe a lot of people have really been clamoring for it, but I do know that it's one that people have asked about.
All right, and that's all I needed the confirmation of. Because, I mean, Dale was 10 when The Incredibles came out, and she
Hmm.
cites it as, like, this important thing because it was really her first exposure to superheroes as a genre.
Hmm.
Like that whole thing you just said, she said that in response to me. Everybody wants a sequel to this movie. Like, I'm not surprised that it's as, like, big and people want to see it as much as they do. It blows my mind that like, why? Because I don't mean to be rude to The Incredibles. I don't have that love for it that I have for like Monsters Incorporated was the first Pixar movie that really did it for me.
Hmm.
I will be completely honest with you. And
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah.
and then Ratatouille did too. And I'm like, and then from Ratatouille forward, even then, like I gotta be honest, like I didn't see Up in theaters because I'm like, oh, it's a Pixar film, like hit or miss. I loved Wally. I'm not really interested in the balloon movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like Toy Story 3, I was on the ocean when it came out, so I did not see that. But since Toy Story 3, I believe I've seen every Pixar film in the theater, which does mean that I saw The Good Dinosaur, and again, I'm the guy who likes that one.
Hey, man, nothing wrong with that. Psychedelic drugs and all that sort of nonsense. I was in on that one. Oh man.
Good, I'm glad.
Um,
Like, well, so like, not that we usually try to dissect our friendship and figure out why, but the fact that Sejohn liked Solo and The Good Dinosaur, those are two pretty good reasons. I'm not, I'm not gonna lie, because
oh
I
man.
mean, like people's reaction to Incredibles 2 was to like rank their Pixar films. Like that was a
Yeah.
big thing going on Twitter this week,
Hmm.
and everybody had like Cars 2 and then The Good Dinosaur at the bottom. And I'm like, those are the two I really liked both of those movies.
Well, and that's the thing that like this is something that also comes up oddly with the MCU as well. Is people have there's been so many of them now that people are starting to try and figure out like here's what it is. They've been waiting for the flop to happen before their eyes, and it has yet to happen. Even something like Cars 2, people, as much as they can bitch about how it's like not a quote unquote well-made movie, that's a different conversation. I disagree, but anyway, if that's the way that they want to talk about it, they still have to admit that it made so much friggin' money. It was the largest franchise for Disney as a company when it came out. Like not just Pixar, but for Disney as a company, its biggest merchandising, like everything everything was Cars 2 for a couple of years there, which is why you got Cars 3 and you got Planes and you got all this other stuff that came out because of that. But people have been trying to wait for the flop to happen in front of them and it hasn't. So now people are starting to like look back and wonder if they missed it, right? And like I said, it's the same thing with the MCU. Every time the next one comes out and a little bit of information comes out, you have this group of people that are just like, this is it, this is the end. Pixar's next movie is going to be the one that kills it, or like Marvel's next movie is going to be the one that kills the entire thing. But then they come out and it's never what anybody's expecting because that's just what these two companies do, right? And then on top of that, like people pay to go and see them, so it doesn't happen. So now people are starting to wonder if maybe we missed the low point and we're swinging back around to the high point again, because Pixar was it was a little hairy there for a second when people were trying to figure out what they were gonna be doing, and suddenly they started taking like a year off because for a while it was a Pixar movie every year, right? And then suddenly,
And then
they were
Brave
going back and doing
happened.
more
I'm gonna be
sequels.
honest.
Yeah, there was definitely some issues with the reception on that one. But again, even that one, if you look at it, first of all, has its avid fan base. There's plenty of people out there that actually very much enjoy that movie, despite the very vocal group that also doesn't. And then on top of that, it also again did gangbusters, like money wise. So like there's no way to look at that movie as a failure really. We're just everybody wants to see the big guy fail, but the problem is that Pixar just hasn't yet, Marvel just hasn't yet. So like it'll happen, maybe it won't ever. But I mean that would be kind of amazing.
Maybe
I
we
don't know.
shouldn't root for failure.
Well, right. It's like
That's
as a group, right? As a people, maybe we should stop looking for everybody to fall on their face. But that, and I think that what you're talking about with the list ranking that's going on nowadays that you see on Facebook or you see in clickbait titles and all that, I think that what that is that's the next step of everybody having that immediate conversation. I think we all got kind of sick of those people being immediately cynical, right? So now what you have is you have people that are hiding their cynicism in these weird conversations about like best to worst and stuff because it still indicates that there's like a cynicism for some of those films that some people just don't have because like you said with like Cars 2 being at the bottom, right? Uh, like think about Cars 2 is at the end of the day it's still a really good film. Does it work well with the first film? No. Does it hit all of the notes that people again expected it to? No. But also for like a goofy spy thriller, it's still pretty funny, right? And like
it's
there's
a
a lot of really
goofy
good
spy
jokes.
thriller too. Like let's talk about the fact that they didn't just do Cars again.
Hmm.
They tried to do something different and they tried to build out that world.
Yeah.
It's ambitious. I mean,
Hmm.
like Mater maybe not the best choice as a main character, but you can't look at Cars 2. Everybody says, "Oh, this is totally their most DreamWorkiest," and it's like DreamWorks does pretty good films. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I don't
I
know.
mean, like that's
That's
not
a
a bad.
weird thing to say.
Yeah. Right.
um, they compare it to that, and I'm like, well, first of all, that's a weird comparison to make. But second, and more importantly for me, they tried something new and different. They
Yeah.
knew people wanted a Cars sequel, and rather than play it safe, they're like, well, let's build out on this world. Like we've only seen Radiator Springs, which is like a blip on the map. Like, how
Right.
do cars live in industrial areas? How do
Yeah.
cars travel?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that like from an artistic standpoint, it's an interesting question, but also like I am a firm believer that sequels do not kill movies, right? If you really love episode 7 but didn't enjoy episode 8, that's okay. Episode 7's still good, right? Go back like you don't have to write off the whole franchise because of one bad movie in the bunch, right? I am a firm believer in that and I want that to be out there before I say this. But Cars 2 is one of those rare things for me where like knowing more about the world is actually kind of exactly what I didn't want. Like Radiator Springs was such a great slice of that reality, and my imagination took care of the rest. So like I totally get why those questions get asked and why artists then want to answer them, right? Like, and so I have no problem with them making that movie. And like I said, I ended up actually very much enjoying it for what it is. It's just really hard for me to consider it in the same context as the first movie, or even now in the third one, right? It's like two exists in its own kind of weird like sub universe of those two films
Like
because of the
Skyfall.
way that those two yeah there's
That's a very
there's like
clever
a
joke.
there's a reverence in 1 and 3 that just isn't there, and in fact 2 is quite irreverent, like it. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't work for as a film for me. It doesn't feel like it works as a Cars film for me all the time. So that's where my biggest issues with that movie lay. But again, like you're saying, like I mean, Pixar even at its worst is still like the best DreamWorks movie. So
Well, it's
like
like
who
what I
cares?
say. It's what I say about Steely Dan, and that is that the song "Do It Again" by Steely Dan, probably the song that gets the most radio play.
Mhm.
I'll be honest with you,
Yeah.
because it sounds like a song. Then probably followed by "Reelin' in the Years." But like "Do It Again," that song comes on, and I think it's one of Steely Dan's worst songs.
Mhm.
Because it's not like fun or pushing to. It's very musically lazy
Yeah.
from those two guys.
Well, it's pop at its worst,
Yeah.
as opposed to it's pop like it's popular music when you're just trying to make a buck.
Yes, that's exactly like it's like this is the song that we did so that people will go out and buy our album.
Hmm.
Like it's a Trojan song, which I
Yeah.
don't know. That might be fun. I can't think of other Trojan songs, but oh my god, that might be a
Oh,
fun
there's
list to
no, no,
think
no, no.
of.
This is a well thought out phenomenon that people have noted for a long time. When you hear that song on the radio that you're like, man, I really like this band. You buy their album and no other track sounds like that. And like there are people that have made like bank on this concept. Beck is like huge with this. You ever buy a Beck album, like 7 out of the 13 tracks are not going to be music that you listen to and sing along to, right? But like there will be those 3 or 4 on there that are really good pop hits, and like that's just, I mean, that's just how you build an album nowadays. When you get to that point in your career, essentially, when you realize I want to do the things I want to do, but I also want people to support my music, so I need to make them buy the album. You throw a couple of tracks on there that you know are going to get people in. I mean, that's just common business sense, right? But it does inevitably lead to these things like 21 Pilots is the same way. Like you listen to some of their their stuff that comes out on the radio, like Stressed Out and all that stuff. If you buy any of their albums and they're all over the map on the kind of music that are actually on them. I mean, one track will sound like it's from the Decemberists, another track will sound like it's basically Linkin Park 2.0, and then right, like there's all of this weird stuff that happens on those albums that you don't hear in any of the pop stuff that comes out on the radio. I don't think you're alone in noting that sort of weird phenomena. Is all I'm saying.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. I'm glad that other people have thought of this. I mean, great that we live in a world where everything's probably been thought of at least once. That's why there aren't a lot of philosophers left.
Oh no, that was a sad truth
That was
you
a
just
sad. Oh, I wonder if anyone's ever thought of what I just thought of. But no, but even like the worst Steely Dan is still better than other music. Is
Yeah,
where
right.
it comes down to. So even the worst Pixar, like, is going to be better than these cash-in kids animated things, like The
Ugh.
Wildlife. Like
Yes, yeah. Any of these knockoff ones that you see
Fly
that
Me
come out.
to the Moon.
Oh
Fly
God.
Me to the Moon too, for some reason.
Space Dogs, I think, was one of
Space
the more
Chimps.
recent. Space Chimps also, but I'm pretty sure there's a Space Dogs franchise as well.
Why are dogs going to space?
Animals in Space is one of the greatest sources of comedy for a child. Are
In
you kidding me?
space is one of the greatest concepts for kids.
Well,
What if we
right.
take something you already
And then you
like
take
and
talking
put it in
animals.
space?
Right. And then you take talking animals and you add that to the mix, and suddenly there's got to be space buddies, right? There must be like
There is
those.
Space Buddies. That one already
Yeah.
exists.
Yep.
Which is what I was afraid you were talking of, but I'm like, no, he's Sejohn. He would know. He would
No,
know
no,
if there's
no.
a Space Dogs and a Space
There,
Buddies.
yeah, pretty sure there's a whole bunch of animals in space nowadays. Our ozone is actually just a fine layer of just animated characters we've killed in space.
Oh.
So
So speaking of things we killed in space, Solo. That seems
Yeah.
fair because it's a
Yeah.
movie that we both saw. Because you haven't seen Jurassic World yet, right?
no, I am not a huge Jurassic Park like fanboy like a lot of people in the world are. So like I didn't even see what was the last one?
Jurassic World.
Jurassic World, right?
Because
Oh
this
no,
is Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom.
Fallen Kingdom, right?
Colon
That's right. That's what the
Fallen
subtitle is.
Kingdom.
Yes, don't forget the colon. Yeah, I didn't see Jurassic World in theaters at first either because like I was very excited it was out and I was glad people could have the opportunity to see it. But I'll be honest, I was more than anything scared of those movies when I was a kid.
That's fair.
Like I know a lot of people got like real deep into them, but like those movies for me were really more sources of like terror than they were entertainment. So I wasn't always a huge Jurassic Park guy. So when they were or when they were rebooting the franchise, I was like, this is probably the right time for this. But this is not for me. And then I really enjoyed Fallen World. Like I mean, nope,
Jurassic World.
I really I really enjoyed Jurassic World. So like I was also excited they were then making a sequel to it, but this is very much going to be like someday when a friend says to me, "Hey, I have this movie. Have you seen it?" No, we should totally watch it right now.
Perfect.
Like that's the kind of movie it's going to be for me.
Perfect. So you know what, Say Report Junior, you get to have your Ocean's 8 discussion because you both saw it. And they've been like Twitter direct messaging about it ever since Zach finally saw it and Dale saw it for her third time. So you guys can have it. We're gonna have a discussion about something in Jurassic World.
Okay.
Even because of what you just said. Because it doesn't
Okay.
seem like spoilers matter to you. And I'm not going to spoil for you the big thing that, Sejohn, I 100% believe when you watch the film, you're going to know is going to happen.
Okay.
Because you need to understand that in the first 4 minutes of the movie, I'm like, Oh, okay. So that's going to be the reveal at the end of this movie.
Yep.
That's fun. That'll be fun. And then I got to laugh so long and hard because the movie has this character. It's James Cromwell. This is not the thing I want to talk about, for the record.
Yeah.
But James Cromwell plays this character, and he gets all these lines that are fucking hilarious if you know about the reveal. Like, you know how if you watch the Usual Suspects, knowing who Kaiser Sose is, you see the little soupçons, and you're like, oh, that's cool. Or like maybe if it's your first time you see those soupçons, and you're like, oh, really? That's how this is gonna go? Bullshit. I can say that Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is a stressful movie the first time you see it, but the second time it's going to be a comedy masterpiece, because it was a comedy masterpiece for me. Because the one, like, the big reveal I totally knew. So as James Cromwell is saying totally straight-faced these things that, like, once you know this thing are actually hilarious, and I'm the only person in the theater laughing, and I'm like, wow, do people really not know what's about to happen? Like, have you not seen a movie before, guys?
Oh,
this is
God.
hilarious. Like, this is fantastic. And I'm like, I need to stop laughing because I'm laughing too hard at something that, like, you know what would be the best thing? Like, the greatest trick Steven Spielberg production could have pulled off is if that didn't happen. If the thing that I was so convinced was going to happen and, like, made me laugh at the movie, then, like, no, that's not, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're crazy.
You know what would have been the most un-Spielberg thing in the world? To not be somewhat formulaic in his movie making.
That's true. That's very true.
I mean, with all the love in the world, somebody out there has to write the fucking formula, and Spielberg is definitely the guy writing the formula. But at the end of the day, it does end up being just a pretty straightforward thing.
Very true. But it was fun laughing. But here's the two things I want to talk about in Jurassic World. And I'll give you a choose your own adventure. Do we want to talk about a semi-outside controversy that's going on around Jurassic World? Or do we want to talk about a problem that happens within the movie? Both of them are in regards to Daniela Pineda's Zia Rodriguez character. So, like, that's
let's
fun.
let's do the little controversy on the outside then.
On the
I thought we
outside?
were talking about I thought you wanted to talk about Chris Pratt's little come to Jesus moment at the movie
No,
awards.
everybody already talked about the come to Jesus moment. I'm just, the only thing about that is I'm now no longer convinced that he and Anna Faris broke up because she did that commercial for Adam tickets.
Oh.
Like, I was like, this is it. He did this, and he's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're bad for my brand now. Get out of here. Now, what I'm pretty sure is she said, I'm going to do a remake of Overboard. And Chris Pratt's like, Jesus doesn't want you to do that. Jesus thinks that a movie with Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn is enough. And she's like, ever since you worked with Kurt Russell on Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Christopher.
Maybe it was more like Jesus wants you to do a remake of Overboard, and she's like, I don't really want to, and he's just like, no, Jesus says you need to, and so he was like using Jesus to make her do these things.
I don't know, but no, we're not going to talk about the come to Jesus
not that,
moment.
then what, Devon? What?
Okay, so the controversy going on is Zia Rodriguez, badass female character, right? In like a world that's full of them now, which is awesome, right? Like, it's awesome that we have this. There was apparently going to be a line of dialogue where she revealed that she was a homosexual.
Right.
And everybody is freaking out about this line being cut, and they're like, this is just more evidence of this stuff being removed from our movies, and they say that it was done for time. How can you remove one line for time? And even Daniela Pineda is like, like, without the line being there, it doesn't change the film, but it would be more insight into my character that I think is sadly missed. I really want to look up the line. Can you look up the line? Because I'd like to hear your delivery of the line.
Okay, give me 2 seconds. I'm gonna mute so that people don't hear me.
So you don't hear him typing. So I will. I'll do it. So that's the thing. And while he's looking that up, I mean, she's a great character, and it's one of those things where the whole movie, I'm not I'm so focused on the actual action and things that are happening in the film that I don't even have time to consider if these people are straight or gay or asexual. Like that is not what is entering into my mind the first time I watched the film. Maybe 6, 7, 8 viewings later I'm considering that, but I'm never considering that. But I'm talking about other viewers of film. But I mean, like the reference that I have to like good reveals of homosexuality in cinema is like Sulu in the Star Trek reboots. The fact that he is gay, and the indication of that is that we see him say goodbye to his husband and adopted daughter, or maybe one of them was the sperm donor, and that they don't go into that, but
Yeah.
like showing us like here's Sulu's husband, like that worked for me. Or in like Power Rangers, which isn't just showing, but it's Trini saying that like admitting I am a teenager, I don't know what's going on, and like I'm confused as to whether I like men or women. But like I'm so afraid to let my parents down that I don't even feel it's right for me to explore that I might be a homosexual. Like those are, in my opinion, responsible and like build the story up sort of reveals. And then there's this line of dialogue that I hope Sejohn found because I'm
I
throwing to
did.
him to read it, and I'm excited to hear your reading. That exists in this film. And Sejohn, you now have the floor.
So she doesn't give the specific. She doesn't give the line as written in the script. She just kind of gives like her version of it.
Her
Or
recollection of
paraphrase
it.
would be the word I was looking for,
But it's
or
in
recollection.
quotation marks, which is strange.
So she says, so I look at Chris Pratt, and suddenly I say, square jaw, good bone structure, tall, muscles. I don't date men, but if I did, it would be you. I mean, it would really gross me out, but I'd totally do it.
Okay,
That is the line.
that is the line.
That was cut because this movie was running too long.
To be fair, there was a cut of this movie that was 2 hours and 40 minutes long.
Yes, and I'm sure that this 40-minute scene of her delivering this line as slowly as possible was really, really
Square jaw. Zia waits for 10 minutes.
breathes heavily.
Good bone
Yeah,
structure.
man, like no, I like it's definitely one of those things where we don't I'm trying to I want to break this down because
Yes.
like I disagree like that we don't that stuff like this is pointless. Like that's not true. Like that's not true at all. Here's the thing. Devon, you're gonna have to divorce yourself from this from what I'm about to say because I know your immediate reaction is gonna be like, I don't do these things, but you have to understand that this is how the world works.
Dude, I
But
understand,
essentially,
but you need to understand that I totally have the other side of this that I haven't seen anywhere, and that's why I'm excited we're about to talk about this.
yeah.
So,
it's
so
like
you fail. Like I understand that the world is a fucking monster.
Right.
I get that.
Wait, it's not even like a monster thing. It's the idea that like every relationship in cinema for years was straight, right? Like divorced from the movies that were like specifically trying to not be straight movies, everything just was, right? And that's the problem. Is like why does a movie have to be a movie about homosexuality in order to have homosexuals in it? It doesn't. But how do you then introduce that idea of homosexuality into these films? Because the problem is that nowadays, because all of those movies for so long were that way, people just automatically assume that something that they see on screen is straight unless said otherwise. That's just the way that it is. So the idea being that, like, no, a movie doesn't have to be a gay movie in order to have a gay character in it, but also no straight character ever has to pronounce that they're straight because everybody just automatically assumes it is. It ends up with these weird, essentially it leads to these weird moments of dialogue where like, why would a character need to say this in this moment? Why is this necessary for this thing to happen when all these other characters don't? Well, the reason that it's necessary for these characters to do it while all these other characters don't is because we already have built-in assumptions about these things that need to be broken down. So like, as much as like it might lead to weird dialogue, I don't care. like I want that stuff to be out there because the other thing is like there are kids that watch these movies and want to be these characters, right? Like what? Like believe me, if this is the type of Jurassic Park that had come out when I was a kid, I'd be much more into Jurassic Park because with a Chris Pratt character for me to follow, like that would have been great. I would have been him for Halloween. I would have been like there would have been like posters of this movie up on my wall with like him front and center with blue right next to him and all that sort of stuff. Like I totally get wanting to like be in this world, right? And so like that needs to be there for everybody. Those characters that people connect to need to be there. And if that means that we have to deal with like clunky dialogue right now until we can figure out better ways of doing it, I'll take the clunky dialogue. And like a moment of one line, like if I probably would have, it would have completely, it would have changed the movie. Like it really would have changed that movie for the rest of that time. Not in like drastic ways that would have made it win an Oscar or anything like that, but it would have been different, right? And that's the thing is like this kind of stuff needs to be out there because plain and simple, we need that representation. And right now, the only way to get that representation in any movie that isn't geared towards specifically throwing representation in your face is moments like this.
Any more wheel spinning that you want to do? Because I'm really excited now. Because you have teed me up, my brother.
Go for it.
You have teed me up for the fact that I agree. Representation is super required because people love to see themselves on television. I remember when Neil Patrick Harris came out and my father said, well, why did he have to do that? And the response was because he is currently playing a very popular character on television. So, like, him saying, like, yes, I'm playing this womanizer and I'm a homosexual, like, for people out there who are closeted and who aren't living on the coasts, in the blue coasts of America, that might give them the strength to actually get to live the life that they want to live and be the person that they want to be. Mm-hmm. I understand that. I understand that representation is important. What I don't like is that her line of dialogue about, I don't date men, but if I were, it would be you, propagates the stereotype that there's no, that it's finite, that there's always a limit to homosexuality. You know, like I'm going to quote Chasing Amy here, and it's not a belief that I have, but it's like all any gay chick needs is a serious deep dicking, right? And that straightens her right out.
Oh yeah.
And it's like so that line of dialogue, the way that it is. Like, it feels like it's like, in addition to offering representation, it also furthers a terrible stereotype.
It's cheap. It's a cheap line. Yeah, it's a totally cheap line. So but here's the thing. If they had come out and said that they were removing it because they felt like it was a not fair representation of people in that community, like that'd be one thing. But nobody's saying that. They're not even pretending that's the reason they took it out. So like you can feel that way about the line, but that's clearly not the reason they removed it. Like, yeah,
no,
okay,
I know
right.
that's not the reason they removed it.
Right.
They're not smart enough to think like that.
But here's the thing. We deserved the chance for that line to be in the movie and for us to have the conversation, the next conversation, which is, okay, now that the representation is finally there, let's talk about how we do it right. But we can't even get to that conversation. Essentially, you're a step ahead of everybody else. We can't get to the conversation of how do we do representation right until we actually get representation on the damn screen first. Like, that's the thing. I applaud like the ability to like call out like shitty representation when it's out there, because that definitely needs to happen. And there's definitely people like this is definitely a conversation that people are starting to have, is because we're seeing more representation. People are now we had the exact same conversation with Love, Simon, right?
Exactly.
Like as much as I want that movie. As much as I want that movie to be better, I also don't really want to live in a world in which that movie never got made. And the same way here, I would rather live in a world where my Jurassic Park movie at least had a very clearly open character that was willing to admit that they were open. And then we can talk about like the subtleties of that openness once it's out there. But it's not. They took that chance away from us. And that's why people are pissed off. Like, as much as we can debate back and forth about like whether or not it's good representation, in the end doesn't matter because they didn't get it.
Because that representation doesn't exist.
Yeah.
We only know about it because of an interview, conveniently released days before the film came out.
Mm-hmm.
like that's the other thing about it, is I didn't really like the timeline on it.
Oh yeah, no, of course.
So it was like, this is marketing. Like, this discussion that people are having is part of the marketing for Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom.
Again, if they really wanted to do this right, removing the line, I mean, there would have been earlier conversations about how they felt like it wasn't doing justice to that community. Like, that would have been the total. And I'm not even saying that I would then give them a free pass on taking it out. We could then have a conversation about whether or not that's right. But again, they took that opportunity away from us because they made this snap decision to do this thing that in the end led to less people being represented on screen. I mean, like, the end. Yeah.
No, that's a good point. You make a good point. I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy that this conversation happened as civilly as it did. But I really
Yeah.
appreciate you divorcing me from the statement. That
No,
that was
because
that was a kindness that I.
well, because it's one of the first things that a lot of people immediately think is that when they hear this stuff, they
Well,
think, well,
not
that's
me,
that's
but
not
it's like, yeah,
me,
but I
right?
understand that everybody has a
And
different
that can be
reaction.
right, and that may not be you, but like right, and I'm not even saying you, I'm saying the universal
No,
you.
I understand
Like
that.
people just need to appreciate sometimes that we live in like a noise hole. There is nothing but noise around us constantly. It's coming from all sides, and it's just getting deeper and darker every day, right? And so a lot of people start to take things in as like personal things towards them that aren't personal and all this stuff. And we just all need to learn that like we need to learn how to filter things out sometimes and listen to what people are saying before we like take them as like insults, and then I think that that's one of the other things that's happening with this particular conversation is a lot of people who are saying things like what you're saying are feel like they're then being called out for things. Then no, you're not being called out for this. It's just that like the world needs to be called out for this, and unfortunately you're in it, so so you're gonna hear that
You're
call
going to
out.
hear that same call out. And you need to be smart enough to know that just because someone else is getting called out doesn't necessarily mean you're being targeted.
Yeah, 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 man.
All right, so now the thing in the movie that I have a problem with, and this is going to be a lot quicker. Zia Rodriguez in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is a paleo veterinarian. That's her job. She's a
Okay,
paleo
okay,
veterinarian.
okay, okay.
And through other lines of
A job that
dialogue
could only exist in the
that
Jurassic
could only
World
exist
universe.
in the Jurassic Park universe. Credit where credit's due.
All right.
And based on dialogue in the film, that's like a degree that she has earned. She has earned a degree because a snap line that she says to another character is, "Oh yeah, and what's your degree in pulling plugs?" Because he's like an IT guy, right?
Okay. A
So
little derivative,
it's
but
wicked
okay.
derivative, but like that's the thing is that she's like, I'm a paleo veterinarian. What's your degree in? But here's the issue that I have, Sejohn. She has never seen a dinosaur before. How the fuck you gonna get a degree in paleo veterinarian science
Yeah.
and have never seen a dinosaur before?
Yeah. You're you're not a doctor, you're an enthusiast. I mean, I don't know. I that is a really bizarre like way to go about it. Why would they not just introduce the idea that they were working on like synthetic dinosaurs or something? Like now that dinosaurs exist in the world, we need to train people to do these things.
But dude,
Clearly there
if
must
you're
be
going to go to a first of all, that's a specialized like
right.
degree. Like
I just why make
veterinary
her
sciences.
why make her a
specialized degree.
paleo vet and then say that she's never actually done it? Why not at least make her a student or like somebody that's maybe inventing this concept? Like make her like a groundbreaker or something. That's so weird. Like why go through the effort of inventing this thing and then not inventing a world in which this thing can accurately exist?
Right,
like
because again, like that'd probably be a very prestigious It's hard to become a veterinarian. It's easier to become a people doctor than it is to become an animal doctor.
yeah,
Which
yeah.
is like I have a real problem with like Rick and Morty, that first season where Beth's like, I'm a horse surgeon, and she feels like all defeated because of it, and it's like, yeah, no, that was probably harder for you to do. Like you understand that, right? Like
Right.
there are people who passed medical school with C's.
Oh man. Yeah.
So it's a specialized thing. So then I'm thinking about is like, so there's got to be a program, right? And that program is probably run by the organization that deals with Jurassic World when Jurassic World exists, like before the park got shut down. And the events of Fallen
right.
Kingdom happened 3 years after that movie, right?
Okay.
So if she has a degree, she had to have been in school. Like it's like, oh, I was studying to be and then the whole event of Jurassic World happened. So I'm not actually a paleo veterinarian. I was studying to be one. There's a discussion, right? Because I hadn't gotten sent out to work with the dinosaurs yet. And it's like, it's such a weird disconnect between the two.
Yeah, In a world that we have made up, like writers in a writer's room somewhere created, this is not like a representation of the real world. So like, why not go the extra mile? I'm just so
Oh,
confused.
do you want to hear about the extra mile? So then, as I'm having this discussion yet again after Incredibles 2 discussion, when we couldn't see Incredibles 2, and this discussion with Dale about how, no, the people are not excited about the Incredibles. Nobody wanted the sequel. And I'm like, well, you're crazy. We get on the subject of paleo-veterinarian sciences, and I'm like, but you know what I need to do? When I get home, I need to Google paleo-veterinarian sciences, because there's a chance that it's something that really exists in the world.
Exactly.
And I'm
Right.
the idiot. I'm the idiot who's questioning it, because
Hmm.
it could be a thing that, like, archaeologists, like, it's an offshoot of archaeology, not archaeology, paleontology, where it's like, so we want to study how their actual biology worked and how you would need to, like, cure them and heal them if they were real, right?
That's not a vet though. That
No,
like I mean
yeah, I
that I
understand
mean
that. It still wouldn't be veterinarian sciences, but it would become veterinarian sciences if that were a thing that people really studied in this
yeah,
world. And
sure.
then once they're alive, well, you're technically a veterinarian, because you could do these things that you know all this theory on,
And what did you
right?
find, Devin, in your googling of the world?
So I googled paleo veterinarian sciences, and the first hit was a fictitious blog for the Dinosaur Protection Project, because that's what the first 10 minutes of Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom are, is Isla Nublar is going to be destroyed by the active volcano in its center. We need to save the dinosaurs. So we see a call center
So
where
you
they
got
are calling senators
got a
to
marketing
try to
website.
get. So I get to a marketing website. That's the only thing that comes up if you Google
Viral
paleo
marketing.
veterinarian sciences.
Oh
And it's
man.
an article by Zia Rodriguez about the importance of paleo veterinarians. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect, right? They needed to go the extra mile. They did it as marketing rather than putting it in the fucking movie. But yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it because they went that extra mile.
Hmm.
And it only furthered my point that if this woman is going to call herself a paleo veterinarian, she needs to have seen a fucking dinosaur in her training. Because it talks about how, like, every animal at Jurassic World had a very specialized regiment, including weekly checkups with one of the staff of the on-staff paleo veterinarians. Over
So
40 paleo veterinarians worked at Jurassic World. Now, if you're going to be a nurse, they don't just give you a degree. They make you work in a hospital for a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
If you're going to be a doctor, you have to do a residency to prove that, like, you don't just know the theory. But no, paleo veterinarians, yep, you just got to prove us that you know the theory.
Yeah, unfortunately, Devin, I think what you've just pointed out in both of these stories is just the laziness of this kind of like sequel. Just straight up, just like, I don't know, she's a paleo vet, I guess, right? That's like smart sounding, but also is like something nobody's gonna question because it doesn't really exist, right?
All right, all
Like,
right, all right, all right, all right, all right. I see your paleo vet. She's never seen a dinosaur before.
oh,
Oh,
that's
that's
interesting.
good.
That's
There's like an
interesting.
arc for her.
Yeah. What could be the hardest thing that a paleo vet could come across? Actually working on a dinosaur at some point. Yes, it'll be the
Dude, you
first
know
time
what would
she's
be
ever
great?
seen
You
it.
know what would be great? If her working on the dinosaur actually had any issue. She's just like, I need to do a blood transfusion on this fucking raptor.
Do you know what would handle this exact concept extremely super well without any real like stupid like not real dialogue to like fuck it all up? Jurassic Park. She Ellie there, right? Isn't that her
Yeah.
name?
Yep.
Yeah, she has this beautiful moment when she's helping the sick triceratops, right? And like she's never worked on a dinosaur before and she makes that very clear, but she also like has this beautiful moment where she realizes that it's something that she can do from other training that she has. And so it becomes this thing where she cares for this sick and dying dinosaur in front of you. And what it does is, because she's not calling herself a paleo vet and acting like this is only I'm the only person that can get this and I'm the only person that can do this sort of thing, because she is kind of an everyday, like, still a super genius, but like because she is a much more relatable character, essentially, with a much more relatable circumstance, it makes the entire thing a much more relatable scene, and actually super sad, despite the fact that we have no connection to this Triceratops. Like, Jurassic Park handles this exact concept beautifully. So to hear that then Jurassic World comes along and just kind of poops it out, it's just like super unfortunate.
Dude, you know what you do? Drop the word paleo. I'm a veterinarian.
Yeah.
Like, and I need to treat, and I took an oath to treat animals when I became a veterinarian. So even though I've never seen a dinosaur, their well-being matters to me.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, there we go. So then you have that like thing where it's like, all right, I've never really worked on a fucking dinosaur before, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah,
I've helped horses.
Yeah, like make her like a dinosaur enthusiast with actual training as a vet, and suddenly like that solves all your problems. It gives you the perfect reason for her to be doing this, because she finally wants to work on a dinosaur. The first time she sees it, it's the first time she's ever done it. I mean, boom, right there. We just fixed that entire problem.
Like this whole thing that like all I think, like she said that, and I'm like, oh, that's cool that you're a paleo veterinarian. I bet you worked on Jurassic World beforehand, and that's why you're so close with Bryce Dallas Howard's Claire, building the world up. And then, but I've never seen a dinosaur.
Man, armchair script doctoring is like the easiest thing in the world.
Well, yeah, because you have the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah.
But like, I gotta be honest, script doctoring, probably the same thing.
Yeah.
You just need to make sure that you get your hands on the script before it's a movie. Because I would feel like I'm fairly confident, Sejohn, even though I've never actually seen a movie script, that if one were to come across my desk and I saw a paleo veterinarian who has never seen a dinosaur, I'd be like, let's lose the word paleo.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Is it seems like both of these situations comes down to, at the end of the day, just like lazy writing for this sequel. I will say that I am super excited to see this, because I love the idea of dinosaurs creeping up in a house. That preview has had me so excited for this movie.
Well, that's the reason why I saw it, because when the first trailer came out for this sequel, and it was, oh, we gotta save the dinosaurs from the island blowing up, I'm like, that doesn't interest me at all. Like, I can't watch like 240 of that.
Yeah.
And then the second trailer's like, oh no, that's like gonna be your introduction, and then shit's gonna happen in the real world.
And then this like Peter Pan dinosaur is gonna come in through your windows, and it's like, oh god, all right,
like, cool. Oh, Peter Pan dinosaur, can you sew my shadow back on? Here, I'll break off my claw. You can use it as a needle.
Oh, Jesus.
I really would love, oh, God, there's something we need the skills, and we probably have in our cadre of people the skills to re-edit all of the Jurassic Park movies and give the animals voices.
Yes.
Because
oh, God,
Jerry Lewis Raptors would be the funniest thing in the world to me. Hey, lady! As he opens the door.
Oh my god.
We gotta give the goat a voice too. When the deer see it, the goat.
Oh no.
It's a living.
No. Oh no.
We went in very different directions. Oh god. So that's it. So I think we covered everything. Sorry that we still didn't get to talk about these two movies that nobody's talking about. But here's a promise. The Say Report Jr. is going to talk about Ocean's 8. So
oh god, are they about? Can we get them breaking promises for us too now?
Oh god, I don't. Here's the thing: even if Zach is like, I don't want to do it, Dale is totally like, we're fucking talking about this goddamn movie. This is going to be the one that really tests their friendship. Episode 13 of Say Report Jr. But so before we hand it off, though, this is going to be a quick thing. I just need to tell you something else I did over this week. And I want you to know that this is the deepest representation I can give of my love for you, Sejohn.
Oh, God. Okay.
I beat Goof Troop, the video game, 4 times.
Why?
I beat it on all 3 levels in the Japanese version,
Mm-hmm.
and then I beat it in the US version. And each time I took extensive notes on the block puzzles.
Nice.
So that I could look at them and see which block puzzles were taken from the Japanese version and brought over to the US version, where we don't have a difficulty setting. And let me tell you, they eliminated 2 of the hardest, bullshittiest block puzzles that the 3rd level of the Japanese version has.
Okay.
That, like, I was so frustrated.
I'm gonna have to go check that out.
You gotta, like, it's, well, you know, because here's the thing. As far as I know, like, everything can change, and we're in the habit of breaking promises here at the Say Report. But we're going to be hanging out at Retro World Expo.
Oh yeah.
And it is fully my intention for us to record at least one playthrough of Goof Troop.
Yeah.
So this is my love for you, is playing through a game that I've played as a kid and got super frustrated as a child. Like, this is stupid. I'm done with you, Goof Troop game. I rented you, thank God.
Oh man.
I played through it as on every possible difficulty so that I am prepared for that moment. And
Excellent.
Honestly, the big question that I have right now is, do I want to be Goofy or do I want to be Max?
Think about it. It's a hard decision, man.
Because here's the thing. Let's talk Goof Troop real quick. Is I can think of no other co-op game that I've played where the 2 characters are so different.
But also both so useful.
Yeah, like, that's the thing. Like, it's not like, oh, she can't do anything.
Yeah,
it's
right.
like, nope, Max takes longer to kill things, but he's fast as shit.
Right.
So,
oh man.
So I don't know, because, like, I played through the first time as Max, level 1 Japan, and then I played through as Goofy twice because I'm like, I need to be Goofy. He kills things faster, and this is a fact-finding mission. And then I'm like, all right, US version, I'll do it as Max again. And I'm like, why am I not Goofy right now?
Oh man, yes, I'm excited. I'm super excited, and thank you for doing this.
Oh no, you're very welcome. I didn't want thanks. I just needed to let you know this is my dedication to providing good art with my buddy Sejohn. So if you actually want to, like, applaud anything that I've said, though, you can get me on Twitter at Devon D. Decker,
or you can find me at Siege versus the World.
And Will, please take a break from your studies in paleoveterinarian sciences to send us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.